All rise, we are good away. The International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals is now in session. La Jones Mechanism International, a pilier excessive la functions residual, the tribunal panel at UHED. Please be seated.
Mr. Registrar, would you please call the case?
Thank you, Your Honor. The Arusha branch of the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, sitting in The Hague this 11th day of November 2020, in the matter of the Prosecutor versus Félicien Kabuga, case number MICT-13-38, Judge Iain Bonomy presiding. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Registrar. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Judge Iain Bonomy, the presiding and pre-trial judge of the trial chamber assigned to this case. My colleagues on the trial chamber, Judge Graciela Susana Gatti Santana and Judge Elizabeth Ibanda Nahambia, are not with us today, but they will join either in person or via video conference at future hearings as appropriate. May I now call upon the parties to make their appearances. Mr. Brammertz.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. For the prosecution, Sergio Brammertz, together with Barbara Goy, Laurel Bake, and Ian Reid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, counsel for Mr. Kabuga.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I am Emmanuel Altit, counsel for Félicien Kabuga, together with my assistants, Jennifer Nauri, Dov Jacobs, and Madame Nimgaba.
Thank you, Mr. Altit. Before we continue, Mr. Kabuga, I am now addressing you directly. Are you hearing these proceedings in a language that you understand? Can you please repeat that answer for me?
My name is Félicien Kabuga.
I shall ask the question again, if you don't mind. Are you hearing these proceedings in a language which you understand? In other words, can you understand what I am saying to you?
I do not understand, said Mr. Kabuga.
Monsieur le Président.
Your Honour. Thank you, Your Honour. Would it be possible for you to repeat the question? I think that the channel issue has been settled, and it should now be possible for Mr. Kabuga to hear your questions in languages he understands, but we will see.
Thank you, Mr. Altit. Mr. Kabuga, are you hearing the proceedings in a language you understand?
Yes, now I can hear you.
I think is clear, and I've observed closely the proceedings from here between your, is it a language assistant and, or is this one of your own assistant lawyers, and Mr. Kabuga? And I'm satisfied that he can, through the interpretation and the earphones, hear the proceedings in a way that he can understand them. I now wish to outline the relevant procedure in the case so far. Mr. Kabuga was arrested on the 16th of May in France on the basis of a warrant issued by the mechanism. On 30th September, the French judiciary authorized his transfer into the custody of the mechanism. On 21st October, I ordered that Mr. Kabuga be transferred temporarily to the Hague branch of the mechanism for a detailed medical assessment in view of his age, as well as concerns raised by him, the prosecutor, and the registrar related to his physical condition and fitness to travel to the Arusha branch of the mechanism. The French authorities transferred Mr. Kabuga into the custody of the mechanism on the 26th of October, and he has been detained in the United Nations detention unit in The Hague since then. The initial appearance was scheduled for today in light of strict health and safety protocols requiring Mr. Kabuga to quarantine for 10 days and to allow for initial medical assessment ordered on the 29th of October to be conducted. The information available to me at this stage is that it is appropriate for this hearing to take place today. However, I am still awaiting a final report on the medical assessment, which should be provided to the trial chamber as soon as it is completed. If it will not be completed within a week from today, then it would be appreciated if the registrar could provide some explanation at that time, along with an indication of when it will be ready. Once it is available, the defence can raise any issues of additional testing that may be needed by way of motion pursuant to Rule 84. At the end of this hearing, the parties will have the opportunity to raise any other relevant issues. But first, I would like to ensure that Mr. Kabuga is fully informed of his rights. is aware of the charges against him and has an opportunity to enter a plea if he so wishes. I deal first with Mr. Kabuga's rights. Mr. Kabuga, I would like to inform you that you have a fundamental right to remain silent throughout these proceedings, and this will not be held against you. In addition, you have a fundamental right to be assisted by counsel, and I note that today you are represented by counsel Mr. Altit and his assistants. Any arrangements for representation by counsel will be facilitated by the registry. Further to these provisions, Articles 18 and 19 of the Mechanisms Statute guarantee you a number of rights. The registrar will now read these two articles in full to you, so please attend to the registrar's reading. Mr. Registrar.
Thank you, Your Honor. Article 18. The single judge or trial chambers conducting a trial shall ensure that the trial is fair and expeditious, and that proceedings are conducted in accordance with the rules of procedure and evidence, with full respect for the rights of the accused and due regard for the protection of victims and witnesses. A person against whom an indictment has been confirmed shall, pursuant to an order or an arrest warrant of the mechanism, be taken into custody, immediately informed of the charges against him or her, and transferred to the mechanism. The single judge or judge of the trial chamber designated by the President shall read the indictment, ensure that the rights of the accused are respected, confirm that the accused understands the indictment, and instruct the accused to enter a plea. The single judge or trial chamber shall then set the date for trial. The hearings shall be public unless the single judge or trial chamber decides to close the proceedings in accordance with its rules of procedure and evidence. Article 19, Rights of the Accused. All persons shall be equal before the mechanism. In the determination of charges against him or her, the accused shall be entitled to a fair and public hearing, subject to Article 20 of the statute. The accused shall be presumed innocent until proved guilty according to the provisions of the present statute. In the determination of any charge against the accused pursuant to the present statute, the accused shall be entitled to the following minimum guarantees in full equality: to be informed promptly and in detail in a language which he or she understands of the nature and cause of the charge against him or her, to have adequate time and facilities for the preparation of his or her defense, and to communicate with counsel of his or her own choosing, to be tried without undue delay, to be tried in his or her presence, and to defend himself or herself in person or through legal assistance of his own choosing, to be informed if he or she does not have legal assistance of this right, and to have legal assistance assigned to him or her in any case where the interests of justice so require, and without payment by him or her in any such case, if he or she does not have sufficient means to pay for it. To examine or have examined the witnesses against him or her, and to obtain the attendance and examination of witnesses on his or her behalf under the same conditions as witnesses against him or her. To have the free assistance of an interpreter if he or she cannot understand or speak the language used in the mechanism. Not to be compelled to testify against himself or herself or to confess guilt. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Registrar. Mr. Kabuga was first indicted by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, which is commonly referred to as the ICTR, in November 1997. And his operative indictment was confirmed on the 13th of April 2011. Mr. Kabuga's indictment charges him with 7 counts. He is charged with both direct and superior responsibility. Mr. Altit, can you confirm that Mr. Kabuga has received a copy of the indictment in a language he can understand, and that you have been able to confer with him about its contents?
Your Honor, I can confirm that the indictment has been notified to Mr. Kabuga in the context of the French proceedings. He challenged the accounts in front of the Chambre d'instruction of the Paris Court of Appeal. As I've already told you in the information that we sent in yesterday, we've tried to discuss this with him on several occasions. And we tried once again this morning when we had a meeting with him. We had this meeting thanks to your intervention. He had a copy in Kinyarwanda. We were able to attempt to discuss the elements in Kinyarwanda, but Mr. Kabuga is extremely tired. Consequently, I think it would be a good idea to read out the entire indictment here in the courtroom.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Registrar, in these circumstances, can you please read the indictment?
Your Honor, just to confirm, you wish me to read the entire indictment?
I do, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. The indictment reads, charges. on the basis of the allegations set out in this indictment, Félicien Kabuga is charged with count 1, genocide, pursuant to Articles 2, 3A, 6.1 and 6.3 of the statute, charged on the basis of paragraphs 16 to 40, 43 to 62, 65 to 78, 80. Count 2, charged in the alternative to count 1, complicity in genocide, pursuant to Articles 2, 3E, 6.1 and 6.3 of this statute, charged on the basis of paragraphs 16 to 29, 39 to 40, 44 to 54, 61 to 62, 66 to 72, 77 to 78. Count 3, direct and public incitement to commit genocide, pursuant to Articles 2, 3C, 6.1 and 6.3 of this statute, charged on the basis of paragraph 16 to 38, paragraph 40, 43, 54, 81 to 85. Count 4, attempt to commit genocide pursuant to Articles 2, 3D, 6.1 and 6.3 of this statute, charged on the basis of paragraphs 16 to 40, 43 to 54, 55 to 56, 66 to 74. Count 5, conspiracy to commit genocide pursuant to Articles 2, 3B, and 6.1 of this statute, charged on the basis of paragraphs 16 to 29, 41 to 42, 44 to 54, 63 to 64, 66 to 72, and 79. Count 6, persecution pursuant to Articles 3H, 6.1 and 6.3 of this statute, charged on the basis of paragraphs 16 to 40, paragraph 43, paragraphs 81 to 85, and count 7, extermination pursuant to Articles 3B, 6.1 and 6.3 of this statute, charged on the basis of paragraphs 16 to 40, 43 to 62, 65 to 78, and 80. Paragraphs 3 to 15 apply to all charges. Definitions and general allegations. In this indictment, the term committed refers to personal commission by a physical or principal perpetrator. The first and third category of joint criminal enterprise, JCE 1, JCE 3, in brackets, or commission based on the fact that a person played an integral part in the commission of the crime. The term contribution, when used without qualification, refers to a mere, a significant, or a substantial contribution. The terms aware or awareness, when used without qualification, include awareness of a certainty, awareness of a substantial likelihood, likelihood or probability, and awareness of a possibility. The terms harming or harm refer to the infliction of serious bodily or mental harm. When carrying out the criminal conduct alleged in this indictment, Félicien Kabuga had the intent to destroy in whole or in part persons identified as Tutsis and acted in order to discriminate against Tutsis on racial and political grounds. The participants in the criminal conduct charged in this indictment possessed the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, persons identified as Tutsis as such and acted in order to discriminate against Tutsis on racial or political grounds. The accused, Félicien Kabuga, was born in 1935 in Muniga Sector, Mukarange Commune, Buyumba Prefecture, Rwanda, and was at all times referred to in this indictment a wealthy and influential businessman and member of the ruling MRND party, president of the Comité Provisoire of the Fonds de Défense Nationale, or the National Defense Fund, and president of the Comité d'Initiative of Radio Television Libre de Mille Collines. Under President Habyarimana's rule, Félicien Kabuga was a member of a group of persons who formed an influential core aligned to the interests of Northerners, focused around the president and viewed by members of the military, the civilian administration, armed inter-Hamwe militia, and armed civilians as being the leader of those who held extremist anti-Tutsi views. Félicien Kabuga also exercised power, authority, and influence amongst all soldiers, inter-Hamwe, other militia, armed civilians, and administrative officials. As shown in the factual allegations set out in this indictment, Félicien Kabuga used his power, influence, and position of authority to ensure that the crimes for which he is charged were committed. Context of the crimes. Between 6 April 1994 and 17 July 1994, genocide against persons identified as Tutsis occurred in Rwanda. In the period 8 April to 17 July 1994, actions undertaken against Tutsis were mostly in the context of a joint criminal enterprise. Between 6 April 1994 and 17 July 1994, citizens native to Rwanda were severally identified according to the following ethnic classifications: Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa, which were protected groups falling within the scope of the Genocide Convention of 1948. The following state of affairs existed in Rwanda between 6 April 1994 and 17 July 1994. There were throughout Rwanda widespread or systematic attacks against a civilian population based on Tutsi ethnic identification. During the attacks, some Rwandan citizens killed or caused serious bodily or mental harm to persons perceived to be Tutsi. As a result of the attacks, there were a large number of deaths of persons identified as Tutsis. Between 1st January 1994 and 17 July 1994, Rwanda was a state party to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide 1948, having acceded to it on 16 April 1975. The crimes alleged in this indictment formed part of the widespread or systematic attacks. Félicien Kabuga was aware of the attacks because he was in Rwanda during the period of these attacks. The attacks were public knowledge and because of his involvement in the planning of the attacks. Félicien Kabuga's criminal responsibility regarding RTLM broadcasts. The radio station RTLM was founded by Félicien Kabuga, Ferdinand Nahimana, Jean Bosco Barguia-Wiza, Joseph Nziorera, Focus Habimana, Joseph Seugendo, Ephraim Kezabera, and others on 8 April 1993. As of 1st January 1994, or at the latest as of 7th April 1994, an agreement and a common purpose existed between Félicien Kabuga, Ferdinand Nahimana, Jean Bosco Barguia-Wiza, Joseph Nziorera, Focus Habimana, Joseph Seugendo, and Ephraim Kezibera, and RTLM journalists, including Valerie Bemewiki, Gaspar Gahigi, Noel Hitimana, George Wigiu, and Cantano Habimana, Anani Ngunziza, Philip Mbilizi. As of 1st January 1994, or at the latest as of 7th April 1994, the agreement and the common purpose was to operate RTLM in a manner to further ethnic hatred between the Hutu and persons identified as Tutsis, and to disseminate an anti-Tutsi message with the goal to commit genocide against Tutsis, to incite others to the commission of genocide, and to violate the fundamental rights of Tutsis, including the rights to security, dignity, and the right to be not subjected to serious psychological abuse. As alleged below, the agreement was acted upon. The contents of RTLM broadcast in 1994, particularly after 6 April, directly and publicly incited the commission of genocide, in that these broadcasts expressly identified Tutsis as such, identified their locations, described them as the enemy, and called for their elimination. Particularly after 6 April 1994, RTLM broadcasts prompted and encouraged persons to kill and harm persons identified as Tutsis, and provided information that was intended to facilitate such killings and was used for that purpose. RTLM broadcasts contributed to the killings of hundreds of thousands of persons identified as Tutsi civilians throughout Rwanda, and the harming of uncounted other Tutsis. Between 6 April 1994 and 17 July 1994, RTLM journalists, including Valerie Bemewiki, Gaspar Gahigi, Noel Hitimana, George Wigiu, and Cantano Habimana, in accordance with the agreement and common purpose to commit genocide, incitement to commit genocide, and persecution against persons identified as Tutsis, broadcast information identifying the location of Tutsis, and urge Interahamwe to find and exterminate them. On 10 April 1994, RTLM broadcasts identified Tutsi civilians hiding in the Gaddafi Mosque in Nyamirambo, and directed the Interahamwe militia to kill them. Subsequently, they were killed. The broadcasts contributed to these killings. On 13 April 1994, broadcasts by RTLM journalists identified Tutsi civilians hiding in the Islamic Cultural Center in Nyamirambo, and directed Interahamwe militia to kill them. Over 300 civilian men, women, and children identified as Tutsis were attacked and killed by the Interahamwe. The broadcasts contributed to these killings. In June 1994, RTLM broadcasts again identified Tutsi civilians hiding in the Gaddafi Mosque in Nyamirambo and directed the Interahamwe militia to kill them, and they were killed. The broadcasts contributed to these killings. On 20th May 1994, RTLM journalist Valerie Bemeriki made a broadcast identifying certain Tutsis and denouncing them as enemies. Persons identified included several priests, including Father Ngoga, Father Muvaro, Father Ntagawa, and Father Modest Mungwara Yoba. Father Ngoga, Father Muvaro, and Father Ntagawa were subsequently found and killed by Interahamwe, who was assisted by Valerie Bemeriki. The management committee of RTLM was known as the Committee d'Initiative and was presided over by Félicien Kabuga. Other members of the committee were Ferdinand Nahimana as director in charge of programming, Zam Bosco Bargariza, who would from time to time be delegated specific functions by Félicien Kabuga, and Habimana Focus as general manager in charge of daily management of the radio. The members of the committee would defer to Félicien Kabuga. Félicien Kabuga served as president of RTLM and as such had de facto and de jure control of programming, operations, and finances of RTLM. His powers also included hiring and firing journalists, giving instructions to them, chairing meetings of RTLM's Committee d'Initiative, representing RTLM in meetings with the authorities, and giving news conferences. Habimana Focus, the general manager, acted on matters agreed upon by the Committee d'Initiative. He would defer to and regularly consult with Félicien Kabuga on matters related to RTLM's operations, including broadcasts. Through his powers, Félicien Kabuga controlled the content of RTLM's broadcasts and instructed, prompted, designed, encouraged, facilitated, and failed to take steps to prevent the RTLM broadcasts alleged in paragraphs 16 to 26 above. He had the ability to report them to the Rwandan criminal law authorities. Félicien Kabuga defended RTLM against criticism by the Minister of Information that RTLM broadcasts were contrary to the terms of the convention which RTLM signed with the government, particularly as regards RTLM broadcasts that incited ethnic hatred and division. Responsibility. On the basis of the facts alleged in paragraph 16 to 28 above, Félicien Kabuga is responsible for genocide by killing and harming persons identified as Tutsi, alternatively for complicity in genocide, for attempt to commit genocide by attempting to kill and harm Tutsis, for intentional incitement to commit genocide by directly and publicly inciting genocide against Tutsis, for conspiracy to commit genocide, for persecution by broadcasting statements that targeted persons identified as Tutsis on the basis of their ethnicity or perceived or real political affiliation, thus violating their fundamental rights, including the rights to security, dignity, and the right to be not subjected to serious psychological abuse, and for extermination by characterizing Tutsis as the enemy and calling for their elimination as a group. Responsibility under Article 6.1 of the statute. Félicien Kabuga is responsible for committing the crimes of genocide, incitement to commit genocide, attempt to commit genocide, persecution, and extermination, because his conduct was as much an integral part of these crimes as the carrying out of the actus reus of these crimes. He intended that the crimes should occur or was aware of their occurrence. Félicien Kabuga is responsible under JCE 1 for the crimes of genocide, attempt to commit genocide, incitement to commit genocide, persecution and extermination against persons identified as Tutsis. He participated in a JCE 1, the common purpose of which was to carry out genocide, incitement to commit genocide, and persecution against Tutsis, and intended that these crimes should be carried out. The members of the JCE were Félicien Kabuga, Ferdinand Nahimana, Jean Bosco Bayawiza, Joseph Nziorera, Focus Habimana, Joseph Serugendo, and Ephraim Nkezabera, as well as RTLM's journalists, including Valerie Bemeriki, Gaspar Gahigi, Noel Hitimana, Georges Rigiu, Cantano Habimana, Anani Ngunziza, and Philip Mbilizi. By his acts and omissions, Félicien Kabuga instructed, prompted, designed, encouraged, and assisted RTLM broadcasts targeting persons identified as Tutsis. Thus, at a minimum, he significantly contributed to genocide, attempt to commit genocide, incitement to commit genocide, and persecution through violations of fundamental human rights of Tutsis. JCE 1 members, including Félicien Kabuga and RTLM journalists, were the principal perpetrators of incitement to commit genocide, persecution, and extermination because they personally carried out or played an integral role in carrying out broadcasts that amounted to intentional, direct, and public incitement to commit genocide and that violated fundamental rights of Tutsis. In addition, JCE 1 members, including Félicien Kabuga and RTLM journalists, are responsible for committing genocide and extermination because by their conduct, they used the principal perpetrators. The principal perpetrators physically carried out genocide by killing and harming persons identified as Tutsis. The JCE members are responsible for attempt to commit genocide by attempting to use physical perpetrators to commit genocide against Tutsis. Félicien Kabuga is responsible under JCE 3 for the crimes of genocide, extermination, incitement to commit genocide, and attempt to commit genocide, which were carried out in the execution of the common purpose. As a member of a JCE 1 to commit persecution, see paragraphs 31 to 32, he was aware of the possibility that other members of the persecution JCE would commit incitement to commit genocide, either personally or by using the principal perpetrators or by conduct that was an integral part of the incitement. In addition, he was aware of the possibility that other members of the persecution JCE would commit genocide or attempt to commit genocide, either by using or attempting to use the principal perpetrators or by conduct that was an integral part of genocide or attempt to commit genocide. With this awareness, he decided to participate in the JCE.
Now, Mr. Registrar, I think this is probably an appropriate time to interrupt the reading of the indictment for a break. The only issue is how long that break should be. Normally 30 minutes. Mr. Altit, is that sufficient in the circumstances for Mr. Kabuga?
Thank you, Your Honour. Well, in view of the meeting that we had this morning and the experience that we had there, I think that 30 minutes should be fine. And afterwards, on the basis of our experience, it shouldn't last too much longer after that. He's really very tired, but I think that'll be fine, 30 minutes.
Until 3:20.
All rise. We will away.